Alright, so this is what Little Crab looks like at the end of part 10. You can see if we hit the reset, the crab and the lobsters are in fixed places. The crab's got a fair chance because he's in the middle, and the worms come up in different places every time. If we run it, we've got keyboard control. You could hear the worm sounds. The crab gets eaten. I'm really bad at this game, so to demonstrate other stuff, I got to take the lobsters out. And then at part 10, you've got 10 worms on the screen. And in my case, I set it to 8. If you eat 8 of them, then the game wins. Okay? So, a couple different things we can add to do features like this. The nature of this game, where we have lobsters and worms, is it makes it an easy game to add levels to. Okay, now even notice when we start this game with 3 lobsters on here, it's pretty hard to do anything in the game with 3 lobsters on there to begin with. So if you're going to build it as a level game, one of the things you can do is put fewer lobsters on to begin with. Okay, what's another thing that makes it kind of difficult for the crab at the beginning of the game? What? Yeah, well, right now the lobsters are the same speed as the crab is. And if you're in the early levels of a game, having the enemies be just as fast as the good guy doesn't give the good guy a chance to practice and build up and everything like that. So we can do things when we put in levels, so we can do things like have less lobsters, and maybe we can always also make the lobsters slower. Okay, so that's how it'll go. So for adding levels, we can see if we open Crab World, you should already have something that looks like this, where you have a populate world method, and then in your populate world method you've got a crab, you've got 3 lobsters, and we've got 10 worms. Okay, well, if we want to add a level to this, we can go up and create a variable called level and set it at level 0 to begin with when we start the game. And then inside our populate world, every time we call populate world, we can say, okay, let the level equal level plus 1. And then now use if statements, which you've had if statements in other part of the code. We can say, okay, if level is equal to 1, then all this stuff we did for the first level is what goes in there. And once I add that, I'm going to do the auto layout, get all the indenting fixed up and everything like that. So now I can see I have the same behavior. If I start the world, everything still does everything the way it's supposed to. But now we want to make level 1 easier. What can we do to make level 1 easier? Take out some lobsters. So let's just leave 1 lobster in on level 1, and we'll still have the 10 worms. Okay, so that'll definitely make level 1 easier. Now that we have level 1 in place, we can make a copy of all of that. And then we have another if statement level 2. Okay, what could we do to make level 2 a little bit harder? add another lobster back. So I'm just using copy paste. Let's put this guy down in the far right corner. 530, 530. All right. And then could we do something with the worms too to help make each level a little easier? Could we maybe have them need to eat less worms on the first level? Yeah, so instead of having 10 worms, let's get rid of 4 of them, so there's only 6 out there they have to get. And maybe for level 2, there'll be 8. And alright, so we made one more copy of the level. Here's level 3. So level 3 will make it a little harder. Do one more lobster. Let's put him in the other corner. Let's add some more worms. All right. So now we have that. All right. So now we see our screen. Okay, level 1. We've just got the 1 lobster. We've got fewer worms. All that. Now, if we look at crab, when crab is looking for worms, here's where it finds the worms. And so in my version of the program, I created a variable for worm goal to keep track of how many worms it needed to eat. And then I compared the worms eaten with the worm goal. Okay. Well, the issue is now each of our levels has a different number of worms on it that needs to be eaten. So you can't just use a fixed value here. So if we go back to the world class, then the world class knows how many worms each level has. So we can add something to the world class to tell us what our goal needs to be. Okay? So just like we've added other methods in the crab class, we can add a method in here, public int. We want it to return an integer since it's going to return a number. Public int worm goal. So this method is going to tell us what our worm goal is. Okay, so look at what we set up. How many worms did we have on level 1? 6. How many worms did we have on level 2? 8. How many did we have on level 3? 10. So we went up by 2 each time. Okay, so if we just make a little formula, we can say return. So our worm goal, we want to make it be based on the level. So let's see. So if we do level times 2, on level 1, 1 times 2 would be 2. What would we have to add to that to get to the 6 we had? 4. And then will that work for level 2 and 3? Yeah, because on level 2, 2 times 2 is 4, plus 4 is 8. On level 3, 2 times 3 is 6, plus 4 is 10. So, is there 12? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, well, is it bad if we have 12 worms but the goal is 10? No, that actually, as the levels get harder, doesn't that help the crab a little bit? Yeah, it helps the crab a little bit if there's more worms than they actually have to eat, because then it doesn't have to get to every one of them. So that actually helps some. So as long as there's more worms than the goal you set, your level should be okay. Alright, so now we have a way of getting our worm goal from the world. Now if we go back to crab, then we can say, okay, our worm goal now, instead of setting it to 8, we need to ask Crab World so anytime you need to ask the world something, that is the prefix that you have to put in front of it. So if you add a method to the world class and you want to call that method in order to ask the world a question or to get the world to do something for you, because when it's time to go to the next level, we're going to have to ask the world to do that for us. Okay? So crab, we do that, and then what we want it to do for us is we need to know the worm goal. Okay, so our worm goal is going to be set to whatever the world says the worm goal is. Okay, so now we come down here and we say, okay, we count the worms eaten. If the worms eaten is equal to the worm goal, we're going to play the fanfare sound. But now, should we stop? We want to go to the next level. So, to get to the next level, we need to ask the world to do something for us. And our method in the world class that starts a level was the populate world method. So we're going to ask the world to populate the world for us. Alright, so let's see if that got us what we need. So reset. Let's see if I can still live long enough.
Ow.
I couldn't even live long enough. So we go to cheat mode. Yes. All right, now, so we got to the second level. What happened? Yeah, there's 2 crabs. We got the 2 lobsters because I deleted the 1 lobster. But if that other lobster had still been there, what would happen? It'd put 2 more. We'd have 3. Okay? So we need something. We don't want to leave behind the stuff from the previous level. We need a way to clear everything off. So if we go back to Crab World, we can make a quick little method again. Public. This time it's going to be a void method because it performs an action, not returning a value. So we'll call it clear world. And if we look at our Greenfoot documentation, we see that the world has a method called remove objects that if you give it a parameter, a collection of objects, it'll remove all of that. And then there's this method called get objects that if you use this method and use the word null for a parameter, it'll find all objects on the screen. So we can take that, go into Crab World. So we can ask the world to remove objects, and we can tell it to get objects null, and that gives us a little one statement way to make sure the world is clear. And if we go into our populate world here, if we add that method clear world, so if we run clear world, is that what I called it? Clear world. If I run clear world before I start to populate any of the levels, then it'll always start brand new. So compile that, reset. I'm going to use cheat mode. Now, as you're testing something like this, what could you do to make the testing even easier? There we go, that worked. Oh no. Oh, I might beat this one fair and square.
Ow.
Nope. Almost. Alright, so to make the testing go a little easier as you switch between levels, one of the things you could do is go down here to your goal and just temporarily put the +4. Well, let's just comment out the whole line. So I can make that line a comment and just do something like return 2. So now as I'm testing each level, I'm only going to have to eat 2 worms on the level in order to beat that level. So that'll be good for testing purposes. So now I can go through, and there's that level.
Ow.
Now, you'll notice on that one, when the level starts, it starts right away. Okay, so as soon as it comes up, the crab starts going, the lobsters start going. So one of the things you might want to try to figure out is like, is there a way to put a little bit of a delay in there so that the user has a chance to catch their breath and get ready before it starts? So that's something you can try to investigate and add in that. Okay. The other thing, now that we've got that level, we also said, hey, it would be nice if the lobsters were slower, right? Okay. So if we look at the lobster, all right, so here's what the lobster does. He turns if he gets to the edge, he does random turns, he does a move, and he looks for crabs. Okay. Well, right now, because this move is included in the act method, he moves every act cycle. So that means he's just as fast as the crab is, because the crab also moves every act cycle. How could you make the lobster slower? What? Move every other act cycle. Or maybe every 2 act cycles or every 3 act cycles. Something like that. Okay? Well, and as you go through the levels, wouldn't you want the lobsters to speed up as you go through the levels? So it gets harder each time? Yeah. So in Crab World, we already have this level variable that tells us what level we're on. Okay. So we could add another method like we did for worm goal. That could be a public int get level method. And then this method could just return whatever the level is. So now if we want to know what level we're on, we can ask the world what level we're on. Okay. I'm going to go through crab and grab this, because anytime I want to ask the world to do something, I need that little bit of code right there. And then now let's go to lobster. All right, so in your crab, you should have already figured out a little counter deal to make the crab's leg animation slow down. So we're going to do the same thing in here. Not print. Private int counter. And we're going to do something that we're going to say, okay, if the counter is equal to, and let's set this up based off of the level. So right now our game goes to a maximum of 3 levels. So if I do 3 minus the level number that I get from the world, then that means on the first level 3 minus 1 would be 2, so I'd have to get to 2 before I move. If I go to 3, maybe we should make that 1, let's make it 1 bigger, 4. So 4 minus 1 would be 3, the counter would have to get to 3 before it moves. 4 minus 2 on level 2, it'd have to get to 2 before it moves. And then 4 minus 3 on level 3, it would get to 1 before it moves. Okay, so we get that. So if the counter gets to that, then we're going to do our move, and then we need to reset the counter. Else, if we haven't reached the counter yet, then we want to do counter equals counter plus 1. And now let's edit auto layout, get it all nice and pretty, compile. Alright, where's my world? There's my world. Compile everything. Run. Well, now my lobster's stuck in the corner. Out there, that guy's, he's slower and I still ran into him. Alright, let's move this guy out of the corner, because obviously when he's slow, being in the corner doesn't help him any. Let's move this away from that corner. Alright, so now you see the lobster was definitely, and then now at the third level the lobster was catching up to be the same speed as the crab. So that's some features that you can do there. Alright, so there's 2 kinds of extra features you can do. You get that basic level structure in place, and then with the level structure in place, you can do other things as far as number of worms, number of lobsters. You can introduce other bad guys, scorpions, things like that. You could, maybe if the crab shoots water at the lobsters, that would make the lobsters go away. So you'd have to figure out how to or maybe it makes the lobster stop for a minute. Okay, now the issue with that is detecting when the water hits the lobster, which you can use the can see and the can eat, the eat method, to determine that if you want to. So if you made a new actor, you could do a new subclass, and I don't know, nature. There's nothing that really looks like some water, like a water spray. So you could just use rocks. Let's say the crab is throwing a rock at it. So we'll compile the rock. Let's put a rock on here. Okay, so that rock is pretty big. One of the things you can do to make a image smaller when you're using it is we can add a constructor for the rock, and if we look at the Greenfoot image documentation, there is this scale method. So you can scale an image to a particular width and a height. So we can go in here to the rock and we can say, okay, get the rock's image, and then say scale it to, let's make it be a 10 by 10 pixel. Compile, go back to the Greenfoot. Now 10 by 10 is kind of small, so somewhere in between, find a happy medium so the rocks aren't too terribly big. And then you'd have to add some code to rock, because right now rocks aren't going to do anything, do they? Now, so we can make the rocks move when we create them. So now we know the rock's going to go in a straight line. But you've got other commands. If you look in the explore the documentation under actor, you can see that you can set the rotation of a particular actor. The rotation is a degree measurement, 0 to 360, with 0 being over here on the right, and then it goes down and around the top. Okay, so if you look at Greenfoot, this is 0 over here, 90 points toward the bottom, 270 points over, or 180 points over here, and 270 points toward the top. So you can do that. You can also, there's also this method for get rotation. So if you have the crab create a rock in order to shoot it, the crab can get its rotation to see what direction it's facing in, and then it can set the rotation of the rock in order to make it go in that direction. And you've already seen in crab how to detect key presses. So we're already detecting left and right. Okay, so let's see how we could, if we want to have a method for throw rock, public void throw rock. Alright, if greenfoot dot is key down. What key do you want to use to throw a rock? Spacebar. So if key down space, then what we want to do is we're going to create a new rock called R. We're going to tell the rock called R to set its rotation to be the rotation of my crab. So it's going to go in a particular direction, and then I need to ask the world to do something for me. So remember, anytime we need to ask Crab World to do something for us, we need that prefix. Only the world can add objects to the screen. So we want to add the rock, R, and we want to add it where the crab currently is. So the crab can do its get X for its X position and get Y for its Y position. Compile. Run. Now notice, since the crab is also moving,
ow, ow,
then the rock just kind of stays with the crab because it's moving at the same rate. So maybe you want to throw the rock in a different direction than what the crab is actually moving. So let's try, I'm just going to do an experiment. Let's set the, where's crab? Crab. Instead of setting it to the same rotation as the crab itself, let's change it by 90 degrees. So let's subtract 90 degrees. So now the rock is either going to go out the top of the crab or out the bottom of the crab. We'll see which one it is. So run. There he goes. Alright, so why is it shooting so many rocks?
ow.
Yeah, because whenever I press, look at the code we wrote for crab, it says whenever the key is down, whenever the space key is down, it's going to create new rocks. Well, the program is running really, really fast. So no matter how quick I press the space bar, the program is probably going to see the space bar being held down more than one act cycle. And so it's going to do that very fast. So again, you could add, if you wanted to, you could add some more code here to say that, well, I can only shoot a rock once every 5 act cycles, or once every 10 act cycles. So you use that same counter mechanism like we used for the animation, like we used for the lobster movement control. That counter mechanism gets used a lot in these types of things. Okay, so then all you'd have to add for this then is, if you went into rock, you'd have to add something here in the act method to say, if the rock sees the lobster, then make the rock eat the lobster. So the rock would knock the lobster off the screen. So you could do that, or if you just wanted to slow the lobster down, you'd have to figure out some way to set that up. So like it would just stun the lobster instead of completely killing it off the screen. So there's some ways you could do that as well. Okay? Alright, so those are just some basic ideas for some extra features. There's all kinds of other things we could look at too, but we'll do it at some other time with like power-ups and ways to control power-ups and things like that.